thank you all for coming. One of our, that I've noticed over the years is after town meeting is over, the board is ready for a quick, efficient agenda meeting, and the attendance tonight, I think, reflects the same.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So we'll open the meeting of the Board of Selectmen for 4 of April, and the first item is their acceptance of the agenda. Hearing no comment, we'll accept the agenda, and then we turn for announcements to the town manager. Libby.
Okay, we have some spring road paving going on Meadow Lane, Back Street, Warren Street, Upper Main Street, and New Street in Sconset. That'll be happening over the next few weeks. The annual town election, as we hopefully all know, is next Tuesday, April 10th. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And just a quick note about the election ballot. Of course, it will have all of the elected officials on there, and the voters will also see 3 questions, only one of which is really valid based on the actions taken at town meeting, and that would be question 2, which is Hummock Pond Road bike path. So it doesn't really matter what you vote on questions 1 and 3. They're moot. Question 2 is the question to vote on, which was approved at town meeting with no call.
That was one nice thing at town meeting. Okay, that's it for the announcements, Libby?
I should just mention one other quick thing. With regard to your meetings next week, you, of course, have your Wednesday night meeting, but just a reminder, you also have a 10 a.m. meeting Wednesday morning in the Town Building Conference Room for the swearing in of the new board member.
All right, you meet twice that day.
Yes.
Casual. Casual. Right. All right. So that takes it for the announcements. Our next item is public comment. Anybody who would wish to make a public comment for items not on our agenda. Whitey, we'll come right to you. Why don't we take Art Gasparo first, and then we'll come to Mr. Willauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Art Gasparo. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Airport Commission. I'm here on behalf of the Commission. I would just like to take a moment to thank the Selectmen, the Town Administration, the Finance Committee, the airport staff, and the public for the support at town meeting. We're going through some tough times, but I think we are moving forward, and I asked the Commission at our meeting last night if it would be okay if I came here as a representative, just to express that appreciation for a lot of hard work that's going into it. Into really straightening out all of the finances. There's sure to be some more bumps in the road, so hopefully we can have patience and understanding on both sides and continue to work together, take down the walls that used to be there, old practices, and establish new practices. But basically that's what I just wanted to express, that we're all trying to get there, and I realize how much work is going on the other side. And as well that, I appreciate the public support as well at town meeting, and understanding it was hard to follow as somebody who is following in all of this stuff. And so the fact that we got the vote and the support is very much appreciated. The other item I would just like to briefly update you on is that the search for a new manager. And we had a commission meeting last night, and we narrowed the list of candidates to the final 4. I'm very excited about the prospects. We have some highly qualified and people. I'm very happy that we went with the search firm. I believe that it's going to yield productive results. Though the 4 candidates will become public next week, we'll be providing photographs and bios to the newspaper so that that can all get out to the public. Next weekend is the assessment center for the candidates, and then there will also be a public meet and greet, which will be at the Rose and Crown at 5:30. I'm not sure exactly which night, either Saturday or Sunday, but that'll be published in the newspaper. And then the interviews, the assessment centers will not be open to the public. The commission will not participate in the assessment centers either. Those will be citizens that have been asked who will participate in those along with our search firm. And then the commission will be briefed at the end of that day in executive session on the assessment centers. The following day, on Monday, Patriots Day, we will have open session interviews for all 4 candidates throughout the day. And at the end of the day, hopefully, the commission will have enough information to make an offer to one of the candidates. So I just wanted to update you on some, I think, real positive progress and hopefully help us all move forward together. And I would also be happy to try to address questions or concerns that you may have.
Arthur, thank you. Patty?
Just a question about the candidates. Of the four, are there any local candidates?
No.
Other questions or comments?
I would add that if I may, that 3 of the candidates have previous experience as airport directors at other airports, and then the other one has experience as the number 2 person in a couple of positions, and it'll be great to meet them and finalize the process, and I think we're going to have a tough choice, which is a good thing.
Arthur, thanks for your comment. It's been a lot of work, and it's not always been a joy, right? I mean, it's been a little tough at times, and I think we got to keep at it.
Absolutely.
You know.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
as long as Art brought up the airport manager position, and thank you for the update. As you know, I emailed you all to see if any board member would want to participate in the assessment center, and Mr. Willauer agreed to do that, so if that's okay with all of you.
That's great. And we thank you, Whitey. It was a big
Thanks.
time commitment, so it's appreciated.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Art, thanks. All right, any other public comment? Mr. Willauer?
Yes, I want to tender my resignation from the Nantucket Energy Study Committee, effective immediately. I feel that as I was appointed a public member before being elected to the Board of Selectmen, that I should have offered my resignation upon my election to the Board of Selectmen. Notwithstanding this, I am willing to serve on the Nantucket Energy Study Committee if I am appointed as a member of the Board of Selectmen or as a liaison from the Board of Selectmen, but not as a member at large. In this way, I am serving as a member of the Board of Selectmen rather than in an ambiguous position. I feel now is the time to rethink how the Energy Study Committee should be constituted to best serve the town's energy conservation and alternative energy production. We need a new paradigm on how we will deal with energy management on the island. This is a complex problem. It is something that requires systems integration. In other words, one part affects the other parts, and if you touch something here, it affects something over there. So it's highly interactive. So we need somebody to lead this, a program manager or a facilitator or a systems integrator. We have various things that we would include in this: conservation for one, solar PV, offshore wind. That's at the planning board now. We probably should bring that back into under the systems integration. Tidal and current should probably be brought in under the systems integration. Certainly land will, geothermal, and others. To put this all into a complete package so that we have a plan and an opportunity on the island to come up with something that is meaningful and that we can be proud of. This is not an easy project. It is highly complex and needs a lot of support. Thank you.
Whitey, thanks for your comments. We'll pick up that on maybe a little bit later in the agenda when we talk about town meeting and some of the thoughts about where we go from here. So, any other public comment this evening? Hearing none. The next item on our agenda is new business, and I'm not aware of any, and not hearing from the members. We'll move on then to the approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. The first item is the approval of minutes of June 15, 2011. Are there any corrections or additions? Hearing none, they'll be approved. And then we have the payroll warrant for the week ending 1st of April 2012. With no objection, that will be approved. And the treasury warrant for April 4, again, no objections, that will be approved. The next section of our agenda is citizen departmental requests. The first item is a request from the town clerk for a reappointment of Carolyn Gould as registrar of voters and a request for a 3-year reappointment of Dave Franzuto and James Perlman as constables for the town of Nantucket. Any discussion, or we just have a motion for
So moved.
reappoint? So moved for reappoint? Second? Any further discussion? Nope. We thank them for serving again, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
So those reappointments will take place. The next, we have an appointment of Jason Leonardo to the Nantucket Historical Commission. Or her resume is in our packet. Any discussions? I think there was an empty seat, so we're happy to have someone step forward. If there are no discussions, is there a motion to
Motion
approve that
approved.
appointment?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we welcome her addition to the commission. Next item, Nantucket Auto Body. Request for approval of application for a Class 2 license to buy, sell, exchange, or assemble secondhand motor vehicles or parts thereof. Anybody wish to address us? What are we up to here? Norman, Mr. Moore's with us tonight.
Thank you. I'd like to...
Do you want to step to the mic? Sorry to do that, but that would be helpful. Just tell us what you're up to. I think
Thank
we
you,
all
Mr. Chairman.
know where Nantucket Auto Body is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. What we'd like to do is apply for a used car license so that we can move cars more around more quickly, and it makes the title process a lot easier,
Good.
so we don't have them sitting there as long.
So you move your inventory quicker. Any questions or comments from any? Whitey?
Yes, Norman, where are you going to store them? Or what facility are you going to use?
Right now, at the present time, we do it at 36 Sparks Avenue, which we have some spaces, but right now they're being used as for abandoned motor vehicles right now. So if we can get titles and a license, a used car license, will allow me to get a title a lot faster for them so I can dispose of them.
We're having difficulty removing the abandoned vehicles because we need titles in order to dispose of them. So it's an avenue for us to go through the registry and apply for a title and then either dispose of them or get them off our property, basically.
Fix them up, resell them?
Yeah.
Right.
Is that going to be included, that building that's being built, is that yours, or is that
No.
somebody?
No, it's
No,
not.
that's not us.
That's part of the gas station next
Yes.
door?
Right.
Oh, okay.
And that's another reason we're here. We're trying to clean up. I mean, they're doing improvements next door, and we're trying to clean up some of the vehicles that we have.
Yeah,
No,
I think it's great.
I think it sounds outstanding.
Is this a public hearing, or is this?
No, it's not a public hearing, but I think we need to approve, the application or the issuance, Libby? Can you help us
The
here?
application.
Motion to approve?
There's a motion to approve. and
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 We're glad to have your towing service available when we need it.
24/7.
Thank you.
24/7, right. For those of us who unfortunately have had to do that. Thanks, Norman. All right. Next item is a request for determination that the following premise license to sell alcoholic beverages are not detrimental to the educational and spiritual activities of a church or school pursuant to Section 16C of Mass General Law. And we had two facilities coming into the downtown area which are within the number of feet, the Sea Dog and the Metropolitan Club, and the board is required to recognize and pass such a determination. So if there's a motion to do that,
Motion to approve.
motion to
Second.
approve, second, any further discussion? Whitey?
Isn't there a ruling about being so far from a school also?
I think of 500 feet, but I might be ahead of myself here.
I think there might be, but I don't think a school was involved in these.
No.
Right, the two facilities are downtown.
Yeah, it's
And
within a
once-
certain number of feet.
But previously, we discussed the Athenaeum. They do have classes there, and they do teach.
They're not registered as a school, though.
Right.
Right.
You know that. You've been there.
I know what those things look like.
All right, so
okay.
at the very least, we do want to recognize that, I think if our motion includes a church or a school, we'll bring everybody involved who qualifies. So we've had a motion moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you on that one. The next item tonight, we have three items related to the same party but somewhat different issues. The first is a request for approval of an application of 1709 Associates doing business as Figs at 29 Fair Street for a change of manager for a seasonal wine and malt beverage in-holder license. Tracy Root, the manager for the premises located at 29 Fair Street. So what, we're just changing the managers, Libby?
Correct.
It seems fine. Any further
Motion to
discussion?
approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Next, we have another request. This is a request for approval of an application of Andre Associates LLC doing business as the Summer House for a change of manager for seasonal all-alcoholic beverages in-holder license. Christopher P. Carlson, manager for the premises located at 17 Ocean Avenue. So Libby, again, we're changing the manager. Motion to...
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
You know, the reason the manager's not here is he had a death in the family.
I understand, otherwise they would be here. The
Right.
Carlsons are involved in each of these three applications.
Yeah.
But Bobby's correct, otherwise the parties would be here tonight, but due to a death in the family, they're not with us. I think these are all pretty straightforward. So we had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so that will be approved. Next, we have approval of an application of Beachside Associates LLC doing business again as the Summer House Beachside Bistro for a change of manager for seasonal all-alcoholic beverages restaurant license. Christopher P. Carlson, manager for premises located at 16 Ocean Avenue.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Approved. Second. Further discussion? Whitey?
I take that, that's across the street?
Yeah, it's the pool.
That's where the old Moby Dick was?
I think one's the pool and one's the restaurant up above, Whitey,
Yeah.
because they have a bar down below.
Yeah, it's the old Moby Dick, if you remember that.
Yep,
Right.
yep.
Good.
And usually we have someone from Wisconsin who reminds us to, everybody has to watch their noise, but I don't see anybody tonight. And we haven't had a complaint for some time, so
Yeah, they
hopefully things
seem
are
to have
better.
it under control.
Yeah. All right, so is there a motion to approve? I think we, do we have that
Yeah,
already?
yeah.
All in
In a
favor.
second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Oh my God, is that it?
Next, we're going to move on to the town manager's report and turn to Libby Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did want to mention, there's my item on here, 2012 Annual Town Meeting Follow-Up, but I wanted to update you too, as I think you know, but to mention for the public's benefit. We requested the Department of Revenue to do a financial management review of the town of Nantucket several months ago. And they actually were prepared to do it last fall. There were too many issues going on, so we asked them to postpone until the spring. So we've been contacted. They are going to be here on Wednesday, April 25th, all day, and they will be meeting with a variety of town officials and staff. They'll be here for that one day, and then they will come another day. They've asked for a lot of documents, which we're compiling now, and their report will take approximately 3 months to get together and complete, and they expect to have it out by July 1st. That was a little bit iffy, but that's the goal. And they'll be back after the April 25th meeting sometime in early May. So just so people know, we had discussed that a while back, and now it's happening.
Good.
Moving on to the 2012 Annual Town Meeting follow-up, of course, we were all there, and so we know what happened, but just
That
some
was
of the...
good. We all get gold stars, right?
Well, we were almost all there the entire time. There was someone missing on Monday evening,
Well,
He's
I believe.
checked out.
those things happen.
In any event, just so everybody understands what happens now, there's a lot of follow-up that occurs. Zoning and other approved bylaw amendments will get forwarded to the Attorney General's office by the town clerk. Home rule petitions that were approved will get forwarded to our legislators by my office
Right,
within.
so just a question, do they go then to Mr. Madden and Mr. Wolf? They both get a letter or something?
They go to Madden and Wolf, yes, they get a letter which details what was approved, was contained in each of the petitions that were approved, and they get certified copies of all of them, and they lose them later in the process, so they have to be provided again. So the town clerk
can't happen.
provides multiple copies at the beginning, which is very helpful. Let's see, there are also a number of projects that will get underway now. General Fund Capital had some projects, so we'll get a timeline together for procurement purposes. And there were some enterprise fund capital specifically for our more immediate concerns. Phase 2B downtown sewer rehab project. We supplemented our existing appropriation and the update to the comprehensive wastewater management plan. So we will be needing to go out to borrow for those items. So we'll need to get together a schedule for that. So just so you know, that's getting onto the
Just to
drawing board.
remind us all, one of them was, what, $700,000?
Yep.
To update the CWMP. So that's a work program. The other one was, what, 2 million addition to 5 we had previously authorized? So we're now talking about up to $7 million for Phase 2B.
Yep.
Getting all those old pipes, that's a huge job.
In
so.
the downtown area. And so we'll also be sure, the project will have to go out to bid, and that's going to take a while, and the borrowing as well. So we'll be sure to update the public about street closures and all that, but that's way, way down the road.
Off-season months, right?
Yes, oh yes, definitely. So those projects will be happening, and I wanted to mention a couple of other things. One regarding Article 13, which was the wind turbine article, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Saturday assessment and some of the things that I observed in general at town meeting that I have a bit of an idea of how to address next year. So first of all, for Article 13, we've had some discussion over the last couple of days, Greg and I and some others, about going forward. What is next now?
Right. To remind everybody, 13 is the wind turbine article, just so
Yep.
there's no mistaking what we're into here.
First of all, we had submitted a variance request to the Zoning Board of Appeals, as you know, a couple of months ago, and it was tabled to the next ZBA meeting, which is on April 12th. And our thinking, provided that the board concurs, is that we will withdraw that at this time. That was specifically to do with this particular project, so everybody good with that?
I think we're all good to go on that.
Okay. And as far as the turbine goes, that obviously there was a message from town meeting about that particular turbine project. And we have been talking more about getting back to the idea of an overall Nantucket energy plan. As you know, we have a grant from Remain for a Nantucket Energy office, and we've been talking about, Greg has been talking to them most recently about another grant to continue with the work that's been done, but maybe we talk now more about focusing on this overall plan, which has a variety of components to it. It includes a variety of groups, the Energy Study Committee, the Planning Commission, and as Mr. Willauer just stated at the beginning, more of a tie-in of all of the efforts that are going on. So just for your discussion about
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I think we as a board have to think a fair amount about what we're going to get into here, but it's a commitment again, and do we want to proceed with an application to remain? Because there is a process that Greg went through last year. And then we, I think, need to be pretty clear on the sort of the structure and how we'll use those funds, what kind of help will we have, how will we define a mission for that project, and how do we integrate it between the Energy Study Committee and ourselves and other parts of the community. I mean, as we know, there will be appointments coming up to the Energy Committee in June. We could enlarge the committee. We might want to consider some form of an assessment, how do we get to where we are? Would that help us out? And so on. Patty?
And I, again, I think my sense is from the meeting that there was a clear message, obviously, about that specific proposal, but there was as clear a message that people were interested in exploring alternative sources of energy. And I do think that some direction on our end in terms of what that looks like and where we can be effective as a municipality, which is also something important to keep in mind, would essentially have me encouraged to go forward with a separate funding source for someone to coordinate the efforts. I would also like to add to the list, there's sustainable building as well, and there's issues with respect to how we conserve as well as how we produce. And,
Right.
our own permitting agencies, in many respects, aren't necessarily keeping as abreast of what can be done in that respect, and maybe that's a place we can also be encouraging with respect to just the whole issue and the gamut of what it affects. So,
I guess the short answer is I concur with everything that was said. I mean, we rezoned the landfill to be a possible solar site. That was
Well, I'm not sure we
another-
actually rezoned it.
Well,
We had it sort of a non-binding, but we did have a
But it was
resolution of
It was a
town
pretty
meeting.
strong
Yeah,
vote for it.
right.
So, I agree with what Whitey said. It's a broad spectrum of issues.
I wonder too, Mr. Chairman, if I could, there was a lot of conversation about how do we meet the energy need at the landfill, and I'm intrigued with, can we do it more efficiently out there? That means sort of, rather than focus our complete attention on finding ways to produce energy to meet it, maybe there's technologies that we can encourage out there that are more efficient in terms of application, because, it does chew up a lot of energy to run that digester, and it may be something that we can talk to Waste Options about and explore other kinds of means of,
We can look at the possibility of solar there not enough to make what the turbine made, but maybe enough to make what the digester uses each year.
Right.
Or and the same kind of questions come up at the Surfside Wastewater Treatment Plant, which is the other big user of electricity.
Right.
So I think we're all sort of saying we do want to regroup. We'll probably want to continue with the application to remain and get that process underway. But I think we want to keep in close touch with where we go here. Whitey, and then I'll come right back to you, Patty.
Yeah, I want to stress that this requires very senior type of management. Once we were doing this, we got involved with energy, and then we got involved with solar. And as you get into it, it gets highly complex and gets very interactive with various components around town. So you need a senior systems integrator to run this. I mean, the individual projects are fine, but they're wired to each other and they affect each other. So when we move forward, we ought to look at how are we going to manage the process. And I recommend that we manage it in a systems approach rather than a bunch of individual projects. And if we do that, then I think that we'll have better results. We found that it takes almost a year for people to come up to speed on various energy projects. You can't just learn it overnight. It takes a while. And if we have a overall manager that can bring a group of people along and interact with them so that they get educated, but they also provide value added, I think that we'll have a better overall product. But we have to look at how we're going to do this rather than what we're going to do. And so I'm making a big plea here for a systems integration approach. We don't have any projects on the island that are this synergistic, and so it'll be new to us, and we have to manage it so we can be confident that the results will be productive.
Patty.
It occurred to me at the town meeting, and now even more in terms of our discussion, there was enough energy, so to speak, in the community about the issue that, it may really suggest that we do some kind of focus, strategic plan, community-wide sort of forum where we bring some ideas together and have an afternoon, a couple of hours with a facilitator to sort of sort out what the mission of this committee would be, what the scope would be, where we might, essentially integrate some of the individuals that were so highly vested in the discussions, what they're thinking as well. Because I did hear from some people that said, I'm very pleased with and excited about the direction, but I don't think this particular thing. Well, those are the people I'd like to hear from in terms of, what particulars they're looking at,
Agreed. I know Libby and Greg have talked about working with some of our staff, the director of the DPW department, and getting some clear thoughts about that process and being able to come back to us in a couple of weeks to work again on that. And maybe after that, we do start to think about a forum or a workshop, because there is a lot of energy, Patty, and you want to grab it and get it to focus and run in the right direction.
If I could add, there's just, the whole excitement around we could be a cutting-edge community on this issue. I think is something that is absolutely true. I mean, we've, for all the efforts of the Energy Study Committee, the proponents of the windmill, or wind turbine out there, that, what they've done is possibly put us on the map going forward, whatever the project looks like, of being a municipality that takes a special interest in what this all looks like. So, I'd hate to lose that, and I think it will take a community forum of some kind to feel like we're getting what we need. I'd rather not do it on a Wednesday night, in terms of the rest of the agenda, but, I think it would be a useful tool.
So it's a conversation we're going to continue, maybe next week, but clearly the week after next week, we expect to have Libby and Greg come back to sort of coalesce in some of these initial thoughts, and we'll go from there. All right?
A couple more things
Yeah,
about town meeting.
that's not the only thing that happened at town. It may seem that way at times, but it's not.
It occurred to me that in some instances, there seemed to be a severe lack of understanding of how warrant articles get onto the warrant and what actions can be taken with them once they are on the warrant. So I scrolled through some other towns' town meeting information links, and I think we could probably do a better job of putting more information out there about things like how you propose a citizen warrant article, or maybe you don't need to put a citizen warrant article in. Maybe you need to find out the answer to your effort first. What the process is, some frequently asked questions, the timing. There is a massive amount of time spent on these warrant articles, reviewing them by the planning board, this board, the finance committee, the staff, and these things didn't just come up yesterday, as it sort of seemed like some people may have thought at town meeting. So just maybe some more explanation of what the overall process is, where to go if you have a question, a glossary of terms. The planning board has a nice glossary of the zoning terms and a summary of their articles. So just wanted you to know that that's something that we're going to be working on to get online for next year and maybe have it available for distribution at various places, the Athenaeum and
An
places
idea
like
would be
that.
some of those links. I mean, occasionally you go to some of the other towns and bring up their warrant, their process, and it's really quite instructive, and there are lots of
Yes.
different ideas out
There
there.
are lots of different ideas and lots of different formats, and I thought actually the format of our warrant articles and motions was a little better than some of the other towns, but
There you go.
not necessarily the information about how to get things on there. So just so you know about
And we continue to
that.
have, who was it, the town of, I think it was Yarmouth, met last week with a $67 million budget, and they had 30 articles. That's all. We somehow always have 100, and there's a lot of work in that. Bobby?
The other thing that we could look at doing, and this is just suggestion, I'm going to throw it out there, is that, I'm sorry. The other thing that we could look at doing, and this is just a suggestion, I'm going to throw it out there, is that once the warrant is printed and goes out, we could almost, I would love to see a website or a chat page or something where people could ask specific questions about specific articles, and then the person who knew the answer could send them back a response. Because we get a lot of that at town meeting, especially with the zoning articles. And then, it happens every year. 15 or 20 will get pulled, and the second day, 3/4 of them go away because Andrew answers the questions. And if maybe we could eliminate that ahead of time.
It's always somebody's specific lot. They say, oh my gosh, there I am. And that's understandable.
And, we live the warrant through FinCom and the planning board, so we know it, but we're a small percentage of the island. And most people get that thing in the mail and they start to read it, and then they go, what is this? And they don't ask the question until they come to town meeting.
So I think that would be good if we could, we may not be successful, let's try something. I mean,
Yeah.
The Barnstable site is one way, there are lots of
Yep.
other ways to think about doing that, so.
So we'll be working on that. And lastly, the Saturday assessment. I don't know what your feedback has been. I've had a little bit of mixed, but mostly positive. And mostly, of course, it would have been great if we could have gotten done in the one day. But maybe with a little work on the warrant number of warrant articles, we could get there. One of our issues is that we don't typically have a fall town meeting, and many of these other towns that only have 30 or 40 articles at their annual also have a fall.
A lot of the Cape towns do, right?
Yes.
They're just as a routine, that's what they
Yep,
do.
that's what they do. So we probably, as we know, will be having a fall special town meeting this year for airport purposes and perhaps other issues as well. Meanwhile, what did you guys think about Saturday? Have you heard?
Well,
much?
I'll mention one comment. When I walked out with a participant, a knowledgeable town meeting attendee. This person who has young children felt that it was a great thing to have it on Saturday. And babysitting was part of it, but it was also more that the person felt they were fresh. They hadn't had to be at work all day long and come out at 6 o'clock, so they were ready to tackle an all-day affair. So that was a positive note, anyway. Others?
Yeah, I would say the same. I do think there's a lot of people that are skeptical a little bit because the weather was in our favor with respect to attendance, and obviously certain issues draw people in. But I think it's worth another try, in my opinion, because it certainly was successful. And I whomever that was, I'm certainly echoing that, because at the end of the day, I'm not the same by any means as I can be in the beginning. So it's just the way it is.
So, it sounds like we're not committing right now, but unless there's something else happens, we start planning to do it again.
Yeah, I thought it worked well. We need to work the lunch thing out a little better. Although,
More food.
who knew we were going to have 850-something people?
Yeah.
Mandy Dice told me it was the most we've ever had in the auditorium there, since we've been having meetings in there, according to his counter, so.
Right. I'm not sure we should make two Saturdays related to the turnout as opposed to.
It did help that it was a
winter.
rainy, wet, nasty
Yeah,
day.
but usually it's an article, the CAP years ago brought a lot of people out, and so that's, I think what's happening. So.
Maybe I'll convene, I had a little work group that I convened a couple of times months ago to work on the Saturday idea, and maybe I'll convene them soon while it's still fresh in our minds for ideas or any ways to improve. But we'll plan, as far as we know now, for Saturday next year.
Right. I think the lunch is one thing. It was a tight half an hour or whatever, and you
That
get
many
out
people.
there and you can't get in line, and I don't know.
If I can comment on the lunch, though, I do think it was a nice gesture. I didn't realize till after, but it was sponsored by the sophomore high school class. And I didn't, as a parent of a sophomore high school student, actually bring a sandwich. So it's partly people like me. I didn't get the word in time myself. But it was nice to have the resources back to the students. I thought that was nice. And it's not as efficient as maybe a caterer would be, but maybe we can keep a little of that flavor.
Well, and all
Get
these,
moms like me to actually produce something.
and all these classes need to raise revenue for their class graduations and stuff, so maybe we
Right.
can tie it in with that a little more, just like they do with the Summer Delight, where they could set up a grill outside or something.
Right. And I think that they've learned that lesson. So let's not wipe that
I
piece
mean, it's
out.
it's a brand new thing, but
Right, right.
It's nice. It is a community. Yes, sir. Phil Gallagher.
Phil Gallagher. I would like you to, it brings out the statistician in me a little bit. It didn't dawn on me until, as the meeting was ending, Saturday meetings mean a selective exclusion of a particular portion of the community, namely the folks who are poor enough so that they have to work on Saturdays, and they're not bosses, so they can't say, well, you can go to a town meeting. So people who have to work on Saturday can't come, and if you have the big meeting on Saturday, you're really selectively excluding a very special chunk of people.
No, I think we all recognize that. I think the counterbalancing is a lot of people are tired and don't want to come on a nighttime. So there's a little bit of each. It's a tough call, Phil. Patty.
Yeah, I had a couple of observations. One of the things I thought that I wanted to mention was how prepped the staff in the finance committee was on the airport issues. I thought that it was very clear where people were coming from, and I think that was really helpful. So I wanted to make the point. There's two issues that I wanted to make sure that we as a group keep in the forefront, partly because we promised at some level, tacitly or directly. One is the SBPF and how it's progressing, depending on what that pilot program looks like. Because I really hate personally to have it hit us without some warning and some information along the way. So just kind of, if we can, once the pilot is proposed, maybe get some updates on what the conversations are surrounding it. And because when it comes, it's going to be one of those very important decisions we're going to have to make. And we've promised town meeting in a sense that we're responsible to take that from the town meeting. And I feel a little bit of obligation there to make sure I know as much as I can. And the other is the downtown renovation. We kind of took it off the table a little bit, but we talked before town meeting about making sure it didn't fall off the radar screen. So I thought it was important just to bring up that, getting focused on that would be a real good next step for us you know.
It's one of those projects that comes out and there's a fair amount of work ahead of us.
Right, and we've done a fair amount, and I know there was, you know, once we decided to put it aside a little this time, I think we've again committed to making sure that we're going to focus on that.
Whitey?
At lunch today, I had a bunch of the graybeards, and they indicated that they weren't sure after everything was amended and counter-amended and everything else like that, what they were voting on.
They weren't sure.
But we need some clarity, even though Sarah does a good job, just this back and forth, if there's any way we can sort of crystallize that so we don't get caught with our pants down, so to speak. I also like the idea of having the break in between. Gives us a chance to rest. Often when you have these back-to-back things, you're tired the next day, you're not ready to really think well, and I found that it was much easier on Monday to think and to follow what was going on, even though it was all mixed up, but at least I tried.
So we get Sunday off, you mean, just to make sure?
Having Sunday off, it really helps to clear up the mind.
You know, I wonder what people did before they had the, you know, screen and the yellow with highlights and the.
You wrote it all down.
Oh, my
It was a
God.
nightmare.
Tough stuff. Yeah.
I just wanted to make one point on the SBPF thing that Patty brought up, and, you know, I got a clear message from the voters there that they would support a pilot program, but I want to make sure that what I understood is what the rest of you understood, is that any application for a pilot program is going to be a new application, not the one pending legal
Yeah.
battle right now. If they win their legal battle and they come back with that on a shrunken version as a pilot program without approval of the Concom, I for one will not vote for it, not without town meeting's approval to do so. I don't believe that's what they authorized us to do. So, you know, that's how I feel on it. I think they need to submit a new application for this pilot program and get the Concom to approve it, because it was pretty clear to me that the voters said they would approve it, but with Concom's approval as well.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, going back to when we approved the application in the first place, I'm not sure anybody sort of said this kind of thing, but I think there was sort of an assumption that if the project had been approved by the Concom, that would go a long way towards addressing the board's concern in terms of the use of our property. And I think what you're saying, that same issue is present today.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so
I mean, I think when the voters voted to allow this pilot program, they were under the assumption that it would have a Concom approval and it wouldn't be decided by the courts.
right, I don't think we want to substitute our judgment for the Concom or the court's judgments for the Concom. So we will have to probably have some executive session on this, because there is a legal matter before us now, and we'll have to think about that. But the policy issues we're talking about now, Patty, and so thanks for raising that. That's helpful. Other comments or concerns? Okay. Next item, committee reports. Libby, do you have some other, are you set?
I'm set.
Come back to your item, you're
Yep.
set? Committee reports?
Do we have to accept Whitey's resignation, by the way? We didn't do that because it was in public.
That's probably a good thing to do. Is there a motion to accept?
Motion to accept. Wow.
Second? And we're going to send him a letter, that's what we do with everybody. Would you like a letter, Whitey, or just our thanks?
I just want you to vote me out.
I think all in favor of voting Whitey out, raise your hands. Aye. He's gone. All right.
It'll be the
That
headline.
means you're back here, Whitey. That's the good thing.
That means I can comment.
Well,
right.
that's, you got a sort of a loyalty to the committee, so we appreciate that.
I don't know if this is the place to mention this, but when, one of the things that's been on my mind is just our relationship when we are the liaison to a board, by the way. Are we voting members? You know, and I would agree. I mean, I think that even in terms of deliberation, I hold back, because I'd rather my commentary happen here than in the committee arena, so. And I don't know if there's exceptions to that.
Well, I almost wonder if we need to be liaisons to all these boards. I mean, we already have enough responsibilities as the Board of Selectmen and all these other boards that we actually sit on and are voting members. You know, I look at the Article 68 work group that we had no liaison on, and they reported to us on a quarterly basis or oftener as needed, and it went very smoothly, and I sometimes think that it mars it up some with us being there.
Even our being there.
Yeah,
Well,
that
the liaison-
we should let the committees be the committees and report back to us, but I would rather see the committee chairman come to this board in a public session and give us an overall and let us ask questions and hear it from a committee member, and because when I give a committee report, it's not the same as the actual committee member being there
Right.
and giving a full overview of the committee.
That's a good comment. Whitey?
I think that it's optional, at least we should make, we don't have to have one for every committee. When it comes to SHAB, I wanted to do it. I wanted to find out about it. As far as participating, often SHAB will say, ask questions of how do we put this before the Board of Selectmen and such, and so you act as an information source. And I think that helps. So I think you provide value added by being there, and then often you can bring it back to this board and encapsulate it if there's something important that the board would be interested in. I find it's a important function, and in certain cases, not in every case, and it's voluntary. I mean, you don't, unless we insist upon, in some committees we've insisted, I think NPEDC or something like that.
Yeah, we're actually by bylaw, we have a member of that committee. So
Yeah.
that's a little different.
Like the CPC.
Right.
The
Member of that
CPC,
committee.
exactly.
Board of
So
Health.
Board of
there's a
Health.
little different in all of these, and I think
Right.
judgment,
Yeah, I think,
you know. and-
But, when we come around this time around for appointments to boards and stuff, we should look at each one. In particular, I mean, I'll give you an example of one. In my case is the Harbor.
Harbor Plan Implementation.
Right. I was the liaison to that board. Whitey's on the board. So it's kind of redundant for me to be there. I've only made a couple of the meetings because the times are difficult for me, and all the other commitments that I have, I've just said, well, this one really, I really don't need to be there. Whitey's there anyway, so he'll inform me of anything that's important.
I'm trying to remember whether I was appointed interim.
Between years, Whitey was on the board for 3 years, was off for what, a year and a half or two, and then you're back on, so.
I think it was, I think I was appointed by this board.
Well, I found another example, again, without running on, is the Capital Program Committee. The wind turbine was on the consideration list there. And I know I was frustrated, the chairman, but I was not feeling comfortable expressing my opinions at that level as a gatekeeper to this board, who would then make a final
You know it's
decision.
gonna come back.
Right, and more than that, I wasn't 100% ready to make a decision yet. And, obviously, in a conversation at the Capital Committee, my opinion on this would be a little bit different than even a committee member, so I wasn't ready to go on record. So, again, it put me in both an awkward place, and I think I didn't want to be putting them in a confused place by, sort of having weighed in.
And I understand what Whitey's saying about CHAB, and it helps with the process, but it also can somewhat hinder it because they can take something that was said out of context and decide, oh, we've got the Board of Selectmen's approval, we're going to run with this. I'd rather have them come before us on a Wednesday night and make a formal request than
think
to
we-
go down the road that they maybe shouldn't go down.
I think there's a distinction there. Sometimes they're interesting to go to committees because you learn a lot.
Right.
I mean, that's a little bit different from participating.
Right.
And so their judgments.
We often all go to committee meetings and just sit there as a general member of the public to hear what's being said.
I think as far as SHAB is concerned, I have to say, guys, you got to bring that before the board, or you got to give it to Dave first before it goes before the board. Give them a methodology, and if they do that, I will often say, hey, they're going to bring it before the board here, because they've got a lot of things that the board really needs to rule on.
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
I mean, SHAB sometimes gets off track. They forget that they're an advisory board. They think that they run the harbor and the fish industry. And, I've had this discussions with some of the SHAB members before, and I was at the SHAB meeting not too long ago when they discussed moving seed, and, maybe I'm confused, but Dave was almost asking their permission to move seed, and I don't believe that he needs their permission. He can move seed, or he should be coming to us to move seed, not SHAB. SHAB is an advisory board, and a lot of these things will come out in the Shellfish Harbor, the Shellfish Plan, but Once they determine, the biologists and the Marine Department determine that there's more seed in an area than there is adults, they should be able to close an area without having to go to SHAB or the Board of Selectmen. There should be a formula in place that just shuts it down, because it's a tricky slope. You've got fishermen on this board who are actively fishing, and they're deciding whether or not they want to close areas.
Yeah, which impact their fishing.
It does. There were 3 members on that board that were still fishing, that were making a decision as to whether or not to close an area because they thought there was too much seed and not enough adults. And I heard all the arguments, and when it was all said and done, I didn't necessarily agree with it. So, I think I'm hoping that this all gets vetted out in the shellfish management plan, because there are definitely some quirks in it right now.
So those are all examples how we got to work hard to, we've got a wonderful group of people helping us out with all these committees, and how we interface with them and make sure we're working together is something obviously we have to pay attention to. So. I do have, any other committee reports? I have one item then. We do have a resignation from the Airport Commission. Carl England submitted his resignation, and so we can formally accept that tonight, I think, and send Carl a letter of thank you. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second.
So moved, second. Any further discussion? Aye. Whitey?
Yeah, I am guessing, but I think that it would be in the best interest of the airport to get a replacement in there, because they've got an awful lot of issues that need to be covered. And if we can provide somebody, or if somebody really comes forward, I would accelerate the path rather than wait.
Let's just talk about that for example. So we all understand we have 2 incumbents whose seats are up in June. Now we have a vacancy, so there are 3 seats available. We could,
No.
well, not two available.
One of the
incumbents.
vacancies is the incumbent, right? So it's only 2 seats available in June.
Well, no, they're actually, when your term is up.
Oh, yeah.
You could apply for reappointment, but I don't mean to be technical, but,
If we appoint someone now, they'd only be there in June, is what you're saying.
well, depending on what Carl's term was, I don't remember.
Carl's term is in 13.
In 13. So whoever would be appointed now to fill his term would sit until June of next year.
Yeah,
So the 2 people this year are Carl and...
no.
No, no.
They're-
The 2 seats
Dan
are.
and Sheila.
Dan
Yeah,
is...
Dan,
'cause Dan filled
Dan
that
filled a
seat.
short seat, right. So one option here, just I hear what Whitey said, one option is to sort of go through the normal appointment process, which would be at the end of June, and to add this to that list. Another would be to advertise and see what comes in, and if we were happy, so to speak, or pleased with the applicants, we could act before that. So that's what Whitey is raising as a policy issue. I'm not sure it's, 6 1, half dozen the other, so.
I just think there's so many important issues before the airport right now that another set of eyes might help.
So, Bobby?
I would be comfortable to do that, but I would want to make sure that we went through the advertising process and make sure we get, as many candidates, qualified candidates as possible.
Right, and also, I think it's obviously a very important spot, and, we have to be comfortable with the appointment, and if we don't, I don't think we have to feel compelled if we're not comfortable with the applicants. That's part of the deal.
Right, we've done that.
We've done that.
So, I mean, if that's sort of the sense, we
Just
go ahead
wait.
and place it, well, I think that what they're saying is place an ad, is that where you all are?
Yeah, I think I'm with Whitey.
All right. What does Arthur Gasparo think?
We can ask Arthur,
Can it wait till June,
not
or should
sure
we
he's-
do it now, Arthur?
ask his commission.
Kind of a toss-up, I would say. We had a discussion briefly at the commission level last night during open session. I think the feeling was that we would be okay if you wanted to wait to June to not have so much work to do. I'm just thinking about your timing and the timing right now. By the time you advertise and then hold your hearings, when would you actually be placing somebody? Probably the middle of May. So it would be like a 2-meeting, and then you'd have to do that work and process again. So to me, it really doesn't matter all that much. I'm just thinking about the overall workload, the advertising and that sort of thing. I think that, the four of us remaining can handle the work. There's the risk, of course, of a tie vote on something, but again, I don't think that that's going to be resolved in the next 4 to 6 weeks, because you're going to have that vacancy during your process.
Right, so you're only gonna
I
have a
leave it
couple
up to you,
meetings.
but I think you would only really, if you go through all of that, probably put somebody in for maybe 2 meetings
To me, before they go in again, and I suppose.
before you
another-
do it again, so.
Right, and it seems to me another part of that is the applicants. I mean, just to think ahead, so people put in their name, and they have a process 3 weeks from now, and then for those who weren't appointed, they have to go through that same process again 2 weeks later. So I'm just trying
Yeah,
to sort of see
I
where
was just
we...
going to make that point. My feeling now, after hearing that, is that we just wait and we do it all in June, and that way we'll get we'll get a good cross-mix of applicants. We won't have to go through the whole process for one appointment that is going to maybe sit there 2 weeks before everybody
Yeah,
else.
that's probably where I am, but I'm not, it's not a big deal either way.
Right.
A way to, I think we all have a responsibility to help find applicants in any case. So I think that's an affirmative job that we and the community have, because, it's an important job, and sometimes you have to reach out and find people.
And Carl was the pilot on the committee, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and so we are required by state law to have a pilot, so,
Unless you get a license, Arthur. Come on, let's get moving.
one thing at a time.
So that's an important
So
factor, too.
we would have to do, if you advertise for that one position right now, you would need to make that a requirement, versus if you waited, you could offer that some people of the applicants would be pilots, but it wouldn't have to be only pilots that
Right.
applied.
Right.
That's another factor.
Is David a pilot?
I don't believe so.
He didn't have his license?
He took his training, he got to some point, and then it didn't take
I
the
don't believe
last
so.
little bit.
Yeah, so right now we have no pilot on the
Yeah.
committee.
Okay, so I think what we'll do, we'll all keep reaching out, look for applicants, and we'll go through the processes at the end of June.
Thank you, Arthur.
All right?
Thanks, Arthur.
I have 2 other items, they're not so much committee items, but just to remind my fellow board members of our responsibility for the town manager's evaluation.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
We'll have it for you before the weekend.
Okay, just, sorry to have to do that, but please. Agenda items also, if you have thoughts, feed them in, okay? Any other items for tonight, members? No? Bobby, you want to do the deed?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, made, seconded. All in favor, say aye. Thank
Aye.
you all for coming. We are adjourned.